Arlene, alcoholic. I can stop drinking, I can't stop thinking. So the problem's always right here with me. And I got to tell you, I thought I set my alarm because I didn't sleep last night and I did not have an alarm. So I woke up 10 minutes ago with about 4 hours sleep. So I don't always make a lot of sense anyway. So that's my excuse for tonight. Anyway, I don't pray, I don't meditate, and I don't chant. And whenever they do that at an AA meeting, I put up my asshole merit badge. And I know most of you know what it stands for, but here we go. It stands for Alcoholics Sharing Sober, Helpful, Odd Life Experiences. That's what I go to meetings for, those odd life experiences, because that's where I learned how to live sober. I heard somebody say they had a flat tire and didn't drink. I heard somebody else say they had a flat tire and did drink. So what I learned was I was always going to have a choice if I was going to drink or not. When I listen to somebody else speak, I always like to know their sobriety date and how old they are for some reason. Just a quirk of mine, I guess. But anyway, I am 85 years old. I am 54 years sober. My sobriety date is May 9th, 1969. And it has a lot of meaning for me for a lot of different reasons that I'll get into, because I start with when I was 5 years old, I saw my dad kill my mother in front of me. And he planned it and he got away with it. And I hear people tell these outrageous stories, and I wonder how many of them are true. So I always like to throw out something that one of my uncles sent me, a newspaper. When I was 22 years sober, I looked for my mother's family, and that's not the one I wanted, but since I just woke up, I don't have the one I wanted. Anyway, I looked for my mother's family, and that's the one. These are copies of the newspaper, and they validated my memories. And because I was 5 years old when it happened, I wasn't sure that I could trust my memories, but I saw an image of my mother in a pool of blood all my life, from the time I was 5 years old to the time I was about 40, I think. I was in therapy, and my psychiatrist sent me to a therapist that did hypnosis. And it was the first time in my life that I didn't see the image of my mother in a pool of blood, but I didn't talk about it because I knew that they had probably locked me up if I talked about it. But it definitely had an effect on me and my personality. And drinking definitely helped me not think about what I saw or remembered. And I didn't know I had PTSD. I didn't know what PTSD was. I just knew that I thought I was crazy. And it took a long time in sobriety to deal with those different issues. One of the issues was my father, who should have loved me and should have been safe with, I wasn't safe with. So whenever I got in a relationship with somebody that loved me, I ran from them. Whenever I got in a relationship with somebody that didn't love me, that I couldn't trust, I tried to stay and make them love me, whatever love was. And that's another, I'm big on words. love to me when I was drinking meant what you said to somebody when you were having sex with them on a regular basis, or a semi-regular basis, or a sneaky basis, whatever your background might be. I won't get into that much of mine. I sometimes show the picture of my, oh, here it is. I worked in a bordello, a house of ill repute. And that was a side effect of my my relationship feelings, because I thought I wasn't getting the enough sex or the right sex, would bring me to another issue of, if any of you have kitties, I love seeing them on Zoom. I'm allergic to cats and I can no longer have one. I had 9 children trying to prove I wasn't gay, but I am gay. And when I was 4.5 years sober, I met my partner on her first day of sobriety. I moved in with her on her 3rd day of sobriety, and we were together 38 years. She passed away in 2011 with 38 years of sobriety. And we had our own meetings, except the only meetings we went together to were speaker meetings. But she was a Navy nurse, and when she retired, she started collecting cats. She was that original, in our neighborhood, crazy cat lady, because she got up to 18 cats in the house. And I went on a trip, and it wasn't until I came back from a trip that I realized I was allergic to pussy. And if you came in and you're new to sobriety and you think you have issues you haven't identified yet, I'm a lesbian allergic to pussy, so I definitely have issues. If you haven't got the drift of who I am a crazy asshole woman who talks my reality in different ways sometimes. I first went to an AA meeting in 1967 in Houston, Texas, but I didn't stay sober. I was in and out of AA for 2 years. And I moved to San Diego, and my home group had a man named Jimmy in it. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I later found out Jimmy was Jimmy Burwell, one of the 2 men that insisted on the phrase "God as we understand him" in the Big Book. Now, I didn't go in and out of AA because of the God work. I went in and out of AA because I didn't accept that I was an alcoholic. I'd go to a meeting and admit I was an alcoholic because you fuckers made me do that if I was going to share at a meeting. So I'd admit it. So I could bullshit you, but I didn't stay sober. And when they called me Dictionary Arlene, and one night some woman went off about her church or Jesus Christ, and at the meeting, instead of talking about sobriety, and they made the mistake of calling on me after her. And I shared that I thought the fucking Christians needed to be fed to the lions and they were all overdue. And again, I didn't know who Jimmy was, but because they called me Dictionary Arlene, he came up to me after the meeting and suggested I look up the word God in my dictionary. My dictionary had 3 descriptions, and one of them was the chief object of my affections. And I knew if I was going to stay sober, I needed AA. It was the chief object of my affections, and it still is the chief object of my affection. If I have studied the steps. I have never worked the steps. To me, work would mean a 9 to 5 job with a 3-hour lunch, and I can't stay sober on that kind of work. So for me, what I did was I went to step studies for years. I still study them. This is my 12 and 12. I stole it when it was brand new, so I have used it. Well, it's so old that I can't even find the right page. It is a 12 and 12, despite the looks. And I have, over the years, had to change the words for the steps to work for me. And the first one I did change was the word admitted, because like I said, I do that to get attention. And I write every day, and what I wrote one day was that I accept that I'm an alcoholic. And I remember where I was standing to this day, where I was with the moment I accepted I was an alcoholic. I doubt if I'll ever forget that. But just as an example, step 3, to me, the way I read it is made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of sobriety as I understand sobriety. And that makes sense to me, because the power greater than me is sobriety. Sobriety changed my character, not a lot, as you can tell by my sense of humor, but I thought my sense of humor was a defect of character. My sense of humor, when I drank, I used it against other people. My sense of humor, sober, I can use it for myself, to describe myself. So it's no longer it may still be a defense, because I still am afraid of people. And so my sense of humor has protected me from people getting close to me over the years. I'm not a speaker, so I never say the same thing. If any of you've heard me before, you hear certain things, but you don't hear the exact same thing, because I'm not a speaker. And I'm 85, so I do get lost in what I'm talking about sometimes. But for me, the importance of sharing at a meeting, if it's as a speaker or just as a member of a meeting, is to share how I deal with life sober. So I share mostly about what has happened to me in sobriety. When I was 3 years sober, I have lost custody of my kids 4 different times in sobriety. The first time I lost them was to my husband, my second husband at the time. The first time I lost my kids, my 2 kids, my first husband disappeared with them after calling my dad and trying to sell them to him. He wanted $5,000 to bring my kids back to me. My dad threatened to have him arrested, and he disappeared with my 5-month-old son and my 2-year-old daughter. And my son found me when he was 16 years old, which is part of my sobriety. And I can't get into all of it, but it had a lot to do. He found me. I brought him out here to San Diego. I was going to a convention here, and I left him at an Al-Anon meeting in the audience listening to a speaker. And for some reason, they called him up to share. And when he shared that he had just found me after 16 years of not knowing who I was or where I was, when I came back to get him after the meeting, he had this group of people around him who had lost their kids through their drinking. And somehow his share had given him hope. And that same son ended up in prison years later. And I've got a letter from him, and he mailed it to AA Central Office looking for me. and when he was in prison, because the only thing he remembered about me was that I was sober in AA, and he thought somebody might know me. Well, at that particular time, our business committee had hired a non-alcoholic secretary. They thought that there was too much confusion on having an alcoholic secretary. They had too much control of the central office. So they hired a non-alcoholic, they thought. Well, she got arrested for DUI and went to jail, and they finally fired her. And so myself and some other people volunteered to run our AA central office here in San Diego. And I'm opening the mail one day and I start reading this letter and I realize it's my son. And I look at the bottom and I see his name and I scream, and I'm in the office. Everybody comes running in. And not only that, I had never seen what do you call it, schedule of meetings in prisons. But for some reason, there was a schedule of meetings in prisons in our literature. And it showed my son was in one of the prisons where they had AA meetings. I still have the letter. I've given him copies of it over the years. And I've gone back to visit him 4 times. I just went back 3 years ago with my daughter, who had never met him or his sister, that lives here with me. And she's 25 years sober despite me. But anyway, what's happened to me in my sobriety is that I've lost my kids 4 different times. I went to work in Yosemite when my second husband locked me out of the house because I had stopped drinking and he didn't want me to stop drinking. And he kept my kids, and he got custody of them by telling the court that I was an alcoholic, which I was, and I admitted to. And so I went to work in Yosemite with a woman I'd gotten involved with, and she got involved with another woman up there and ended up stabbing me 22 times while we were working in Yosemite. And 10 years before, at my 10-year of sobriety, the day before, I was out fishing with some friends, and I slipped on an embankment, and the bones came out of both sides of my right ankle and tore my right foot off. 18 years sober, I was in a relationship with a woman that was a couple years sober, but crazier in hell, one of those people that didn't love me, and I was trying to make her love me, and I stayed with her. And I realized how crazy she was. So I was packing my car to leave, and she came back and found me packing the car, and she beat me unconscious with a 2x4. And I didn't drink. And I lost the sight in my left eye. That's another long story I won't go into, but I'm blind in one eye. I think my mother warned me about that. If you play with other people, you'll go blind or something like that. I can't remember what that was my mother threatened me with as a child. Anyway, I've had cancer 4 times. I'm hard of hearing. Maybe that's what my mother said. I'd go deaf if I played with other people. Anyway, I'm hard of hearing. And I'm blind in one eye. I'm losing the sight in the other eye. And I know people in sobriety who went blind and learned sign language. She worked with children to learn sign language. I've tried sign language, but I forget most of it. If you don't practice it, I forget it anyway. I got hearing aids because I couldn't hear people in meetings, so that I could hear. that odd life experience that you get to hear in meetings. I do have PTSD. I've been hospitalized 4 different times for depression and PTSD. I refused to take medicines for years because there was so much talk at meetings about people on medications. They weren't sober. And finally, in 1999, I went on a medication that worked for a few years for me, and then it didn't. And then the last time I was hospitalized in, I think it was 2002, somewhere around there, they put me on Wellbutrin, and I've been trying to stop biting my fingernails my whole life. And for some reason, when they put me on Wellbutrin, I quit biting my fingernails. So I've been happy about that one. But I share, I share these kind of things that aren't in the book. I like things that I heard from people early on was, and one of the issues I've had with Zoom is that the host at a lot of meetings will share after everybody share. My in-person meetings weren't like that. The host or leader never shared after somebody shared. They just called on the next person. So what I was taught when I lead a meeting, look at people's faces, you'll know who needs to share. And that's still true. And that's another reason I love Zoom, because you can look at people's faces on Zoom when they're not hiding like I do sometimes behind my asshole merit badge. Why I've got it up there, remember, look at the top one. Admitting you're an asshole is the first step. And what was I talking about? God, I told you I'm not a speaker. I'm just an alcoholic. My years are not what keep me sober. It's my days that keep me sober. And for me, I was told to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I did that, and it worked so well. I still go to a meeting every day, still working well. I'm afraid. Well, I'm not afraid anymore. I just don't like not being in a meeting because, and especially Zoom meetings, because I am afraid of people. And you only get to, which reminds me about the steps. And so many people, if there are any new people here, I want to tell you how to learn to take an inventory. Take my inventory when I speak. Take everybody that shares in the meetings inventory. Go home, write out that inventory. And then when you get done with it, cross their name out and put yours there and read it again. You're going to have part of your own inventory. It's good practice for learning how to take an inventory, in my opinion, because it worked for me, because that's what somebody told me to do early on. I was mad at somebody in the meeting. She told me to write his inventory, and I did. Except she told me, she asked me if I put his name on it, and I said, yeah. She said, well, one more thing before you read it to me. Cross his name out and put yours there and read it to me. And it still works for me. I was at a meeting the other day that I'd never been at on Zoom, and I had my asshole merit badge up, and somebody that didn't know me and had never seen it before told the host that they felt I should take that down because it was a bad example to alcoholics. And so I took it down. And then later, when he realized that there were a few people there that knew me, and I keep my sobriety date there by my name, I guess he saw it. He left the meeting, and I wanted to find out why that word particularly bothered him, but he left the meeting before I could. But I don't judge him by his opinion. I don't judge. My daughter came up, my daughter's 25 years sober. She moved into the senior building I'm in, And she came up the other day, and I know they have Bible classes here. One of the residents is a pastor, and he has Bible classes once a week. And I knew she went to those. I don't care. She's got her own life. And that has a lot to do with why I say I can stop drinking. I can't stop thinking, because she smokes, and I keep I'm thinking I should help her stop smoking. It's not going to happen. Anyway, she came up the other day with my grandson, who's visiting from San Jose. And she was hemming and hawing about something. I said, well, what's going on? Just spit it out. And so she said, well, I was afraid to tell you because I know how you feel about religion and God, but I got baptized the other day. And I said, well, I don't care. I was baptized once. I followed some. I'd been bisexual all my life. And as a teenager, I followed a girl to her church, and I got baptized so I could sleep with her. Well, we never slept. Anyway, that's another story. There they are, my back and forth between sobriety and I don't work the steps, I live the program. And living the program to me is not drinking. The word and the step, I'm still changing steps and words. And the word I changed last year and has a lot of meaning for me is the word in the 10th step. It reads, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Hell, I've been admitting I was wrong all my life, even when I wasn't wrong, to get along with people. And so I looked at that step and I did some writing about it. And what I've learned, what I'm doing is learning how to admit and accept when I'm right, because it's still hard for me to accept that maybe I'm right. And as a surprise, AA was different when I got sober in the 60s. People didn't tell people what was wrong with them. And there's a book that Dr. Bob read. It's it's not very religious, it's very spiritual, I think. It's written by a pastor and it's online. And Dr. Bob read it every day and had his pigeons, he called them pigeons back there then. And it's called The Greatest Thing in the World by Henry Drummond, and it's online. And one of the things he says in there is that the greatest thing in the world is love. And what he describes is the love of one alcoholic for another alcoholic. And he says things in there like, after reading that book or reading that part of his writing and then reading the big book, I could see where Bill stole from Henry Drummond, because one of the things Drummond says is that talent is developed in solitude. Character is developed in the mainstream of life. And Bill uses that phrase in the big book. If any of you read that daily reading on, I think 95 or somewhere in there in the big book that we read it, he uses the mainstream of life phrase there. And I like that because my character has changed because of my sobriety. Love to me in that book, he has 9 ingredients, but to me, love is when I come home at night, there's somebody there that loves me, and I live alone. But love to me has come to me from my sobriety, and love means for me to trust myself. I can trust myself to stay sober. I respect myself for staying sober. Staying sober is caring for myself. And I have patience with myself when I'm an asshole of the other kind, because I still can be. I still can react to life in a way that isn't very nice. Anyway, that's part of me. If there maybe is another asshole here, an alcoholic that wants to share some sober. See, I've even forgotten that already. I hope somebody wrote it down so I can remember. Alcoholic sharing sober, helpful, odd life experiences. I want to hear other odd life experiences from other assholes.